10 years to win a war, 10 more just to get home. This is the story of the man the gods themselves tried to stop. 10 years earlier, the war at Troy finally ended, and one man's cunning had won it. His name was Odysseus, king of Ithaca. He should have been home within weeks. With victory won, Odysseus and his men launched their ships for Ithaca. It should have been a short trip across familiar waters. None of them knew it would take 10 years to arrive. Their first stop turned violent fast. Odysseus's men raided the Ciconi's city for supplies, and greed made them stay too long. What started as an easy raid quickly became a desperate fight.
Take what you can carry! We set it for nightfall!
Ciconi reinforcements charged down from the hills and struck back hard, driving the Greeks into the sea. Many men never made it back to the ships. Odysseus barely escaped with his fleet intact.
Fall back to the ships, now!
Just as home came into view, a violent storm slammed into the fleet without warning. Winds tore the ships completely off course. They were hurled into waters no map could explain. They landed on a strange island, where the friendly locals offered a sweet fruit as a gift. One taste, and Odysseus's men forgot they ever wanted to go home. The fruit erased every memory of Ithaca.
Why would I ever want to leave this place?
Odysseus refused to leave his men behind, even drugged and dazed as they were. He had to physically drag them back to the ships one by one.
Bind them if you must! We are not staying on this island!
Next, they reached an island of giants, one-eyed monsters called Cyclops. Odysseus, ever curious, led a small crew ashore to explore. It was a decision he would soon come to regret. The cave they entered belonged to Polyphemus, a monstrous Cyclops far larger than any man. When he returned home and rolled a massive boulder across the entrance, Odysseus's men realized they were trapped inside. There was no way out except through the giant himself.
Strangers in my cave, how fortunate for my dinner.
As the giant devoured two men before their eyes, Odysseus realized brute strength would never save them. Fighting the Cyclops head-on meant certain death for everyone. He needed a clever trick, and he needed it fast.
We cannot outfight him. We must outthink him.
Odysseus offered the Cyclops strong wine again and again, until the giant grew heavy-lidded and relaxed. Pleased with his guest, Polyphemus asked for his name. Odysseus answered with a single clever word.
Tell me your name, stranger, so I may know who I feast on last.
My name is Nobody.
The moment the giant fell into a drunken sleep, Odysseus put his plan into motion at once. He and his men sharpened a wooden stake and heated its tip in the fire. Together, they drove it straight into the sleeping giant's single eye. Polyphemus's scream shook the entire mountainside, drawing other Cyclopes to his cave door. They shouted through the rock, asking who had hurt him. He could only answer with the name Odysseus had cleverly given him.
Nobody is killing me! Nobody has blinded me!
If nobody is hurting you, then it must be the will of the gods. We cannot help you with that.
At dawn, the blinded giant rolled the boulder aside to let his sheep out to graze. He ran his hands carefully over each animal's back, feeling for escaping men. Odysseus had his crew cling tightly to the undersides of the sheep instead. Safely aboard his ship and pulling away from shore, Odysseus couldn't resist one final taunt. He shouted his real name back across the water for the giant to hear. It was a moment of pride that would haunt him for years.
If anyone asked who blinded you, giant, tell them it was Odysseus, sacker of cities, son of Laodicea!
Blind and humiliated, Polyphemus fell to his knees and prayed to his father Poseidon, god of the sea. He begged for vengeance against the man who had blinded him. Odysseus had just made the most powerful enemy imaginable.
Father Poseidon, hear me! Let Odysseus never reach his home, and if he must, let him arrive broken alone and far too late!
Later in his journey, Aeolus, keeper of the winds, gave Odysseus a strange and powerful gift. It was a tightly sealed bag holding every storm wind in the world except the one that would carry them home. For a while, the plan worked exactly as promised.
Keep this sealed until you see your own shores, King of Ithaca. Everything you need for the journey home is bound inside it.
Within sight of Ithaca's shores at last, an exhausted Odysseus finally allowed himself to sleep. His curious crew, convinced the bag held hidden treasure, crept closer to examine it. Quietly, they began working the ties loose.
He never shares his treasures with the rest of us. What is he really hiding there?
The moment the bag opened, every trapped storm wind exploded out at once. The blast hurled the entire fleet violently backward across the sea. Months of hard-won progress were undone in a single terrible night. Desperate for shelter, the battered fleet sailed into a narrow, sheltered-looking harbor. They had no idea it belonged to the Laestrygonians, a race of giant cannibals. The giants were already watching. Without warning, the giants hurled massive boulders down onto the trapped ships below. One by one, the vessels shattered and sank in the narrow harbor. Only Odysseus's own ship, held back at the harbor's edge, managed to escape. With most of his fleet now destroyed, Odysseus and his few remaining men searched desperately for safe harbor. They found it on the island of Aea, home to the powerful sorceress Circe. It looked peaceful enough, but nothing on this journey ever truly was. A scouting party found Circe's palace deep in the woods and gladly accepted her warm hospitality. She welcomed them with food and enchanted wine. The instant they drank it, every one of them transformed into pigs.
Drink, travelers. You've earned a proper welcome.
Odysseus set out alone to rescue his trapped men, fully expecting to face Circe's magic himself. The god Hermes intercepted him on the forest path. He gifted Odysseus a magical herb strong enough to block Circe's spell entirely.
She will offer you wine laced with more than kindness. Eat this, and her magic will have nothing left to hold upon.
No mortal has ever resisted me before. You are something else entirely.
Protected by the herb, Odysseus walked into Circe's hall completely unaffected by her magic. Stunned that her spell had failed for the very first time, she lowered her wand in surrender. She restored his men and, unexpectedly, became one of his most valuable allies. Circe welcomed the crew to stay and rest for a full year on her island. But when it finally came time to leave, she gave Odysseus a warning far darker than anything before. To find his way home, he would first have to travel into the underworld itself.
Before you can go home, you must first speak with the dead. Only the blind trust can tell you what still lies ahead.
Following Circe's exact instructions, Odysseus sailed to the very edge of the known world. There, mist-shrouded cliffs marked the entrance to the land of the dead. No living man was ever meant to walk through that door. Following Circe's instructions exactly, Odysseus knelt at the threshold and poured dark offerings into a trench. Almost immediately, the spirits of the dead began rising from the ground around him. They were hungry, restless, and desperate to speak with the living.
Spirits of the dead! I come seeking answers! Drink and speak with me!
Among the crowding spirits, the blind prophet Tiresias stepped forward with a dire warning. Odysseus would make it home eventually, he said, but only under one strict condition.
You will see your home again, son of Laertes. But touch the cattle of the sun, and you will reach it alone, broken, and years too late.
Sailing onward, Odysseus faced the Sirens, beautiful creatures whose song lured sailors to their deaths on the rocks. To keep his crew safe, he sealed their ears completely with wax. He alone wanted to hear the legendary song, so he had himself bound tightly to the mast.
Come closer, Odysseus. We know all that you have suffered, and all that you long to hear.
Row! Do not untie me! Row!
Next came an impossible choice between two deadly threats guarding a narrow strait. On one side waited Scylla, a monster with 6 snapping heads. On the other churned Charybdis, a whirlpool powerful enough to swallow his entire ship whole. Odysseus made the agonizing choice to steer toward Scylla rather than risk losing the whole ship to the whirlpool. As they raced beneath her cliff, 6 massive heads snapped down at once. He could only watch, helpless, as the monster snatched 6 of his men in an instant. Grieving and utterly exhausted, the surviving crew finally reached Phaeacia, island of the sun god's sacred cattle. It was exactly the place Tiresias had warned them to avoid at all costs. But with no food left and nowhere else to go, they had little real choice. Trapped on the island for weeks by punishing winds, the starving crew slowly ran out of options. One night, while Odysseus slept, his desperate men broke their sacred promise. They slaughtered the sun god's cattle just for a single, much-needed meal.
Better to anger a god on a full stomach than die of hunger with clean hands.
The sun god was furious, and he demanded justice from the heavens above. Zeus answered by unleashing a violent storm the moment the ship left the island. Lightning shattered the vessel completely, killing every man aboard except Odysseus himself. Odysseus alone survived the wreck, clinging desperately to a broken piece of the hull. For days, he drifted across open water, with no crew, no ship, and no land anywhere in sight. Eventually, he washed up on Ogygia, a hidden island home to the nymph Calypso. She nursed him carefully back to health and fell deeply in love with him. But when it came time for him to leave, she refused to let him go for 7 long years.
Stay with me. I can offer you a life without pain, without war, without end.
I would still rather see the smoke rising from my own home.
High on Mount Olympus, the goddess Athena finally brought Odysseus's case directly before Zeus. She argued that he had suffered more than enough for one lifetime. It was time, she insisted, for the wandering king to finally be allowed to go home.
He has suffered 10 years for other men's pride, Father. How much longer must he pay for a war he did not even start?
Zeus agreed, and sent the messenger god Hermes racing down to Calypso's island at once. His message was simple and absolute. Release Odysseus immediately. Defying the command, Zeus warned, would bring the full wrath of the gods down on her.
Zeus orders his release, Nymph. Defy this, and you defy Olympus itself.
Reluctantly, Calypso agreed to finally let him go. Odysseus spent days cutting timber and building a sturdy raft with his own 2 hands. But Poseidon had never forgiven him for blinding his son, the Cyclops Polyphemus. Spotting Odysseus alone at sea, the sea god's old fury reignited instantly. He summoned a storm violent enough to tear the small raft completely apart.
You blinded my son and thought the sea would forget. The sea forgets nothing!
Battered nearly to death by the crashing waves, Odysseus finally washed ashore on Scheria, land of the Phaeacians. He was exhausted and utterly alone once again. A young princess named Nausicaa discovered him while washing clothes on the beach with her attendants. Most of her companions fled in fear at the sight of him. Rather than running, she calmly offered the stranger food, clothing, and help. Nausicaa brought the mysterious stranger straight to her father's palace for protection. The Phaeacian king welcomed him warmly, offering a feast fit for visiting royalty. Nobody in the hall yet knew exactly who their guest truly was. Moved deeply by their kindness, Odysseus finally chose to reveal his true identity to the entire court. He stood before them and began telling the extraordinary tale of everything that had happened to him. The whole hall fell completely silent to listen.
You wish to know my name? I am Odysseus, son of Laodice, and I have been trying to reach home for 10 long years.
Moved by the power of his story, the Phaeacian king granted Odysseus a ship and a loyal crew of his own. At long last, Odysseus's feet touched the familiar soil of Ithaca, but the goddess Athena disguised him instantly as a frail old beggar. Before revealing himself to anyone, he needed to see exactly what had become of his kingdom. In a secluded swineherd's hut, Odysseus finally revealed his true face to his son Telemachus, now grown into a man. Neither of them had laid eyes on the other in 20 long years. Their reunion was fierce, emotional, and immediate.
You cannot be him. My father died at sea years ago.
I am no god, my son. I am only late.
Odysseus soon learned the grim truth about his own home. Over 100 arrogant suitors had taken over his palace for years, feasting endlessly on his wealth. Worse, they were pressuring his wife Penelope to give up hope and remarry. Together, father and son devised a bold and dangerous plan of their own. Odysseus would sneak back into his own palace disguised as a ragged beggar. When the moment was finally right, the two of them would strike the suitors together.
Say the word, father, and I will stand beside you against every last one of them.
Disguised as a ragged beggar, Odysseus walked straight into his own feast hall completely unrecognized. The arrogant suitors mocked him.
Move along, old beggar, before I make you move.
Penelope finally announced a contest to settle the matter of remarriage once and for all. Whoever could string Odysseus's legendary bow, she declared, and shoot an arrow through 12 lined-up axe heads would win her hand. It was a challenge no ordinary man could ever hope to complete.
Whoever strings my husband's bow and threads all 12 axes shall have my hand. Let us finally see who among you is truly worthy.
This bow was never meant to be strung by mortal hands.
Let the beggar try if it amuses us before supper.
He will be given the same chance as any man in this hall.
With effortless, practiced ease, the beggar lifted the bow and strung it in a single fluid motion. He drew back the arrow and fired it clean through all 12 axe heads without hesitation. In that stunned silence, Odysseus finally threw off his ragged disguise and revealed his true self to the room. Gasps of horror spread through the suitors as they realized exactly who stood before them. Loyal servants rushed to barricade the hall's heavy doors, sealing the suitors inside with nowhere left to run. Odysseus and Telemachus fought through them together, standing side by side. In one decisive, chaotic battle, years of abuse finally came to an end. With the suitors finally defeated, Penelope still refused to believe this weathered man was truly her husband. She tested him with a secret detail about their marriage bed that only the real Odysseus could ever know. When he answered correctly, without a moment's hesitation, she finally broke down in overwhelming relief.
Move my bed outside our chamber, so I may finally sleep in peace.
That bed cannot be moved. I carved it myself from a living olive tree still rooted in the earth.
After 20 years, 10 spent fighting a war, and 10 more fighting his way home, Odysseus finally found peace. If this story fascinated you, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because there are so many more incredible ancient stories still waiting to be uncovered. I'll see you in the next documentary.